So today we're doing a deep dive into something that happened almost overnight.
Yeah, this sudden threat of U.S. tariffs on Indian rice, it sort of came out of nowhere.
Exactly. And our mission here is really to unpack how a major international trade policy decision can just, emerge from a single complaint.
And for those of you following this, it's so much more than just rice, right? It's a look at the whole mechanism of tariffs and what it means for, well, for U.S. consumers and for American farmers.
So where did this all even start? It sounds like it traces back to one single meeting.
It does. A roundtable with American farmers. A rice mill owner from Louisiana basically stood up and complained that some countries were dumping rice into the U.S. market.
And dumping, is that trade term for selling goods way below the market rate?
Right. That's the one. He specifically named India, Thailand, and also China, particularly with imports going into Puerto Rico.
Okay, so a complaint is made. But what happened next is, well, it's pretty astonishing.
It's frankly astonishing in its lack of process. The president immediately threatened tariffs right there on the spot. Seriously. Just like that.
Just like that. Our sources describe the Treasury Secretary literally scrambling to write the names down on a piece of paper.
Wow. No consultation, no economic analysis.
None. One source we looked at put it perfectly. They said, policymaking is hard, not in the Trump White House.
That's quite a statement.
Yeah, they compared the whole thing to the amount of research you might do for a school project.
Okay, so that's the policy launch. Let's see what happens when that rash decision meets the cold, hard math of global trade.
And this is where it gets really interesting, when you compare the scale of it all.
Go on.
India is a giant in the rice world, the biggest producer and the biggest exporter. We're talking 23 million tons sold to 172 countries.
So what part of that massive amount actually comes to the U.S.?
A tiny fraction,
Yeah.
just 3% of their total exports. It's valued at around $400 million.
Okay, so it's a small piece of their pie. But what about from the U.S. perspective? How much do we rely on India for rice? A lot more. The U.S. imports about 1.3 million tons a year, and a full 26% of that, especially the aromatic kind you see in stores, comes directly from India.
26%.
So you have to ask yourself, what's easier to replace? 3% of your exports or 26% of your imports?
Right. India can probably find another buyer for that 3% pretty easily.
Exactly. But U.S. importers, and ultimately you at the checkout counter, will be the ones who really feel the pinch.
Wait, but if the math is that clear that U.S. consumers get hurt the most, that seems like a terrible negotiating tactic. Why would this be the move?
Because it's not really about negotiating, it's about domestic politics.
Oh, okay.
It's aimed squarely at appeasing American farmers, who are, a very crucial vote bank.
But I thought farmers were already struggling, partly because of these kinds of trade policies.
They are, and that's the irony. They're projected to lose up to $43 billion this season, largely because of the administration's own previous actions.
Can you break that down for us? What are the main pressures they're under?
Sure. First, previous tariffs made trading partners like China just turn away. They started buying from Argentina and Brazil instead.
So we lost a huge customer.
A huge one. Second, those same tariffs increased the cost of everything farmers need. Think tractors, fertilizer. It all got more expensive.
And the third factor?
Labor. The immigration crackdown made finding cheaper farm labor much, much more difficult.
And this leads to what one of our sources called a masterclass in policymaking.
I think they were being a little sarcastic, yeah.
So the administration is taking the revenue it gets from all these tariffs.
Which the president called a relatively small portion of the billions coming in.
And they're using that money to provide $12 billion in economic aid directly to those same farmers.
That's it. You essentially trigger the losses with one policy, then use the revenue from that same policy to level some of those losses.
It's a tariff-funded insurance policy where the consumer is paying the premium.
And those costs are trickling down and hitting everyone. Affordability is a huge issue. We're now seeing 40% of Americans say their economic condition is poor. That's up from 37% just last month.
And we just saw inflation tick up, too.
We did. It hit 3% in October for the first time since January this year. So people are feeling it.
And internationally, this new rice issue must be complicating things with India.
Massively. U.S.-India trade talks were already tangled up with huge issues, H-1B visas, Russian oil.
Now you just throw this on the pile.
Yep. It pretty much guarantees any kind of comprehensive deal gets pushed even further down the road.
So we've seen just how quickly domestic politics can destabilize these huge global trade flows.
It really does, and it leaves us with, I think, a crucial question to think about.
What's that?
Well, this tariff threat impacts a minimal part of India's trade, just that 3%, but it hits a significant chunk of U.S. imports, 26%. So if a country keeps relying on these swift, politically motivated tariffs, does that ultimately weaken its own negotiating power and credibility on the world stage in the long run? That's definitely something for you to consider.